Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I'm joined by Rachel.
Hey, y'all.
And Alex.
I'm here.
And Jess.
Hello, world.
That was
official. It's
yeah. Is that your new? That's your.
I don't know.
greeting?
And the hair flip.
You're trying it out. It works.
Yeah, it's nice.
Mm-hmm. I'm just glad I don't have to have one. I have the whole intro.
Yeah, it was already made for
mine.
you.
That's really fun. How's everyone doing? We're all doing good. Everyone's
Good.
well. Everyone. As we get started here, I thought maybe we could reflect a little bit. I mean, we're kind of over the hump of summer, right? We're starting to go downhill.
Almost
into
August.
The fall.
Next week.
Pumpkin spice coming up.
It's coming.
Ooh, yeah. You can go get your Halloween costume soon.
Probably can at some place.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably already there.
Oh, yeah. Hobby Lobby.
I think I saw someone found the pumpkin Reese's, and then it's fall.
Oh, I
done.
love those.
Yeah, I think they have the perfect ratio of peanut butter to chocolate
yeah.
for me.
And the Christmas
Yep.
tree ones, all
Yeah.
the
Oh,
shape ones.
and the Easter eggs.
Yeah. So good.
Those are better. I like more peanut butter than chocolate. I know some people might disagree. But
And I feel like there have been hints towards, I saw this week, and this isn't one of the headlines, but a lot of stores are closing. Like they're already announcing, for the first time really ever, like Walmart, Target, that they're closing
Black
on Thanksgiving, and
I know.
that they're not going to have. They're going to actually let people have Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
which will be
it
weird.
took a pandemic
Not mad about it.
to bring us back.
It took a pandemic.
So I mean, the fall is kind of being ushered in.
Yeah.
It's coming.
So, looking back on this kind of crazy roller coaster we've been on, maybe we could all share a highlight or maybe something that you're glad you got to do because of the circumstance that you probably wouldn't have been able to do. Is there
That's
something,
a good question.
We're trying to start things off positive today.
I like it.
know?
Okay, I have something that I'll go first. Something we probably wouldn't have done this either if not for the pandemic, but we had a couple vacations cancel. We had some extra money because no birthday parties, things like that. So now I'm justifying why we did this.
Good, because I was about to judge
here we
you,
go.
so.
But we did it. We ended up buying a trampoline.
Oh,
And we
fun.
never would have. I don't know, Ben. Would we have done this? I'm not sure.
No, honey, we wouldn't have. I don't know. I was trying to channel.
I don't know if we would have done it, but there was just like a certain point where I'm like, my 3 little boys are running around.
Yeah.
And for some reason, a trampoline was the answer. And so we did it.
Aw.
And we got one. We got one that had like a 600-pound weight limit. So we spent a little more, but everybody can jump on it. We can get 6 people on there.
Oh, that
So, yeah,
was
it's fun.
some of my best memories as a kid.
On a trampoline?
Yeah, we would
Good.
camp on a trampoline.
Yeah. And yesterday we put it was hot, so we put the sprinkler underneath and turned it on.
So fun.
I mean, I was the fun mom
don't
yesterday.
tell your homeowner's insurance that you
Yes.
did that.
I mean, that was a hot item this summer. Trampolines were one of those things that you couldn't buy. That freezers, because everyone bought a cow.
Yes.
This literally
Did that too.
You bought a cow and a trampoline. You had to have gotten the third thing, a pool, right?
We already, we already.
Okay, you already had the inflatable pool
I
that you couldn't get.
I was scared to get a big pool because of. I mean, I have a 6'4" and a 22-month-old, so I was scared to get the big one. But
I feel like those were the
Those were
3
the
hot
hot
items
items.
on the marketplace, and also Nintendo Switches.
Yeah.
yes,
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Those
curious
are
what the
sold out.
next hot item is going to be for the fall coming up because there's always something.
Yeah. Well, this year I
We'll
think
see.
it was normal things that most people could have bought or wouldn't have bought any time, but then all of a sudden there's a. What do you mean there's an inflatable
Yes.
pool shortage? Those used to be outside of Walmart and no one wanted them.
Ben, we need a trampoline today, now.
I haven't heard anybody talk about toilet paper in a while, though.
Yeah.
So I think, is that back to normal?
I think
as far
people
as
are
we-
still buying it.
Fun.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, we used it in a game the other morning at our
Oh.
family gathering, so I don't know if that
What?
was a little.
Did you save it?
Yeah.
No,
I'm just
it
kidding.
was, yeah.
I do have an update regarding that. I don't know. I don't remember if we talked about this on the podcast or not, but one of the things I did during the toilet paper crisis, and we talked about this, I know, at least in the atrium, was I got a bidet.
Oh, Alex.
And we installed it in our basement. So one time this summer, it's not a fancy one. It's one I could install myself. So one time this summer, my kids were downstairs playing, and it's in our basement bathroom. And I walk in to about 3 inches of water.
Oh no!
Just on the floor in the bathroom because our 1-year-old daughter Hannah had pushed the bidet on and it was squirting for who knows how long. That was not one of my better moments of the summer.
Alex,
I was not happy.
And that's when you decided we should have bought a pool.
And that's when I uninstalled it.
You know what's really funny about that is I've been sitting here thinking of what my highlight was.
Yeah.
And your bidet comment reminded me of what my highlight was. And that is that when around the time you got that bidet, we were all talking about bidets. That was the hot topic around
highly invested in the companies. Yeah.
In the student ministry, they started making YouTube videos and they were walking around the campus filming, and they came up to us and were asking us about bidets. And at one point they asked me, you know, what's a bidet? And I think I described it as a squirt gun for your hiney.
Oh.
And in doing so, I made a GIF of that.
Yeah.
And now that GIF is famous. So like if you type bidet into like a GIF keyboard on Twitter or on Facebook, my face comes up with the quote, a squirt gun for your hiney.
Cue you typing that into Facebook Live right now.
Yeah, I'm going to type it in. All I can think of is
there it is, guys. Look at everybody commenting.
Yeah. So I'm just really glad you helped me realize we prayed before this that I would think of a highlight. And
see, everybody's looking for the GIF, and now we've lost everybody.
I also did have a TikTok featuring the bidet with my son. So.
Okay. Well, post that too.
Okay, great.
Here we go.
All right. Anybody else have a highlight they want to share?
Well, yeah, this is something that's kind of in the process for me. The whole thing about COVID babies or whatever. No, I'm not pregnant. Don't freak out. But all my friends are pregnant. So I've been around a lot of pregnant people, and I've just been learning a lot about just pregnancy and birth and labor. And it's just been something that I have become really interested in. So I'm actually getting certified as a doula.
Cool.
So that's something that I'm kind of doing with my extra time that I have.
That's really neat.
I feel like everyone in ministry and church has kind of their side thing or their, side hustle or whatever. So kind of
love that.
Getting trained to do that. So that's a highlight for sure.
Yeah, that is. I don't think I've heard of a lot of side hustles in ministry, and Myron would be proud of you because he's written the book, The Side Hustle Pastor. You're welcome for that plug, Myron. Good preaching Sunday. But I haven't heard of that as a side hustle. So,
so there we go.
Wow.
There you go.
Alex, did you share your highlight? Or
I don't know what. I mean, that was not my highlight. Walking into my basement with the bidet, it actually created, quite. Yeah, it was a rough. I mean, anyway. I think probably my highlight, at least that I can think of, like with my kids, was this was the first year that we really bought fireworks, and my kids stayed up late. So typically we would go to, firework displays and things like that around the neighborhood and be pretty cheap. And so this was the first year, and I think a lot of people did this. Everyone I heard that ran a fireworks stand said they the numbers were through the roof because there were less of these displays everywhere. But my son, I feel every week is Dad, I love fireworks, and it's cute, and also I hope he's not a pyro or anything. But so that was probably one of the most memorable, because usually our kids are in bed beforehand, and so he got to stay up later and watch them and pick them out, him and my daughter. So that's one of them that's popping into my head right now. That was a first, and I don't know that it's quite COVID. Maybe it's just my kid moved into that age and combined with COVID. I don't know, but it was fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
love it.
Very good. All right, moving on to headlines. Our first headline today is from PJ Media. It says, will authorities cut water and electricity to churches that defy Newsom's shutdown order? So this is based out of California, where there were kind of a lot of tweets going out this weekend from John MacArthur Church, where despite, the government saying you cannot gather, they went ahead and did it, and it looks very full. The auditorium is packed.
Yeah,
it's a people.
And if you don't know who John MacArthur is, I mean, he's probably been one of the famous pastors, at least in America, for a really long time, especially probably more in the vein of people that are Reformed and on maybe that side of Christendom. And so he's been a voice in the church for a long time, and no stranger, I think, to being outspoken and taking a stand and all that kind of stuff. And so to me, this isn't really surprising from him. And there's things he's taken a stand on that I've been like, yes, I'm with you. And there's things that he's taken a stand on that, not knowing him, and that's part of this. The difficult part of this is not knowing that church and the leadership and all that, that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I don't think I would, that's a hill I would die on. And so this is one of those things that I don't know, a ton about, but it seems to me, as they're processing through this, that it's engaged people in a couple different ways. Like, it's engaged people that maybe would have not shown up at church to like show up, and that's their form of protest because they don't want the government to tell them no. And then obviously it's maybe engaged people that aren't fans of the church to even have more venom or things like that to throw. So those are, I guess, my quick thoughts on it.
Yeah. I can't even imagine what it's like in California. It's so different, I feel like, than anywhere else right now. And they've been in lockdown for just so long. It's just so much more intense there, I feel like. And so I feel like everything probably feels like 100 times more intense in California, the things that are happening and the weight of, restrictions and all that kind of stuff. So I just can't imagine how people are feeling. And I feel like in that high intensity, you respond differently to different things. Like, oh yeah, they're gonna tell us not to do this, well, I'm gonna like, I'm tired of this, like, we've been in lockdown for 5 months or whatever. I just can't even imagine what people's thought process are right now. It can really wear a person down, I'm sure.
And he's using his leadership in his church, people.
I mean, I think the circumstances from state to state are so different too. I looking at these photos, it looks even much different than what we're experiencing here with what, we're having some people on site for services and online. So it's a split, and we're trying to, practice social distancing and mask wearing where it is needed. I mean, locally, I think we're facing potentially a mask mandate for Omaha
on Monday.
That could, affect things in the church. But yeah, you look at this, and it does look like, you can see why people could fall on both sides of the argument. He is standing in defiance of what his government is telling him, but I think this kind of goes back to our conversation a little bit last week about who the church is, and and is this really persecution? I think some people would say yes, and some people would say no, because we are the church, and we're not being told that we cannot worship a sovereign God that we believe in. We're just not, that we're being limited in how we can gather.
They're not saying you can't have a religious experience, like you can't be online. They're just saying you can't meet in person right now.
Which it brings up the conversation or the argument of like the importance of gathering. And the scriptural basis for that.
Yeah, and I think people have, and for good reason, should have some righteous anger when they see things maybe like this, and like want to maybe dive a little bit more into what is the realities. And I just haven't, there's so much going on in my own life. I haven't had time to figure out, okay, are they doing, online services? I wouldn't be shocked if they weren't, just from the history I know from him. And so that maybe that's not an offering, and maybe that's not a theology that they have ascribed to and ever been a part of. I know they definitely put messages online, but that live gathering. So I don't know all of that. I don't know the elders or any of the kind of things at that church.
Breaking news on their website homepage. They have a live stream at 10:30 and 6.
Okay. So they do. Yeah. So they do have a live stream. And so I think a lot of the things that are difficult in the conversation too is we can read into, and you brought this up, Rachel, California is totally different. Every state is mandating this totally differently. So we can read into how we're being forced, in Nebraska one way based on the leadership in California, and it's very different, and so we can start to pander to things or panic at these things without knowing a full scoop and story. And I think that's one of the big issues with headlines is we can pull all of our thoughts and feelings and experiences in our life towards that headline, and then write a story and a script in our our minds that might not be fully realized of what's happening. So,
and I think an important thing to remember about this stuff too, when it comes to state government, is so much of the conversation around politics revolves around the president, and it's like you have, as a citizen of this country, you have a responsibility to get out there and vote. Yeah. So, like, if you really believe that these officials are taking the rights from you, then you get the opportunity to vote them out. And so, I mean, that's kind of the way it is. And we still live in a republic, right? So, I mean, there are personal things you can do to kind of change these things before just assuming. And I think one thing is just what is concerning to me is the lack of grace that I will see some Christians give the government. I know that we want to believe in every conspiracy we see sometimes and things like that, but there's also just like, there's just normal people too trying to figure some of this stuff out. I know there's a lot of like desire to believe that there's this big evil government trying to control us, which, I mean, I'm sure there's some truth in the shadows somewhere to some of these things that you can't deny. But our first reaction shouldn't be, oh, this person is trying to, ruin, take away my religious freedoms. Like, that shouldn't just be our first reaction when we see something like this. It's like, let's have grace for people and realize that they're trying to keep the public safe, because that's technically their job. And they're, wherever you are in this whole debate, like there needs to be room for nuance. Mm-hmm. But all right, by the head nods, I'm going to assume we can move on to the next headline. That headline comes to us from foxnews.com, the Fair and Balanced. Giants pitcher Sam, am I saying this right? Coonrod? Is that how you say it? I don't know if that's right.
Someone that's a Giants fan is correcting you right now.
Yeah, I know. They are all over it. I apologize for mispronouncing that. Anyways, he refuses to kneel during the Black Lives Matter moment because of faith. I'm a Christian, is what he says. I'm not a Giants fan, so I didn't see this moment. I'm going to try to clarify it a little bit just so everyone is aware. It was not during the national anthem, just because I think that was some of the misunderstanding I was seeing going around online, is that, oh, well, of course he shouldn't kneel for the national anthem. And this wasn't that. This was before. I guess it was almost a way for the officials to have two separate moments to acknowledge Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, I think a lot of leagues have been trying to navigate this. Like, how do we balance, like, the national anthem? Because there's that whole debate, kneeling during the national anthem. And then how do we still honor, movements and Black Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff that kind of, spurned out of the Kaepernick thing. So, I think that is a good clarification to make there too. Because as I've seen people sharing it, it seems like there's not maybe an awareness that even whatever side you land on in the debate of kneeling during the national anthem, this was not that. Mm-hmm. So I think that is a clear thing to make a distinction.
Yeah, and I think initially, as I saw the article, I kind of started to read through it, and I think you have to read to understand the context of what's going on, because in here he quotes, they asked him what was his perspective, obviously, why he was doing that, and he said he believes that he can't kneel before anything except for God. And so I feel like that brings a whole other side to this story of like, okay, that's an interesting thought. That kind of sparked my like interest of like, well, that's true. Like, we as Christians should not be, bowing before anyone except for God. And like, so, where do you go from there? And what does that look like with this situation? I just think it leads you down your own kind of thought process of what does that look like for me? And like, is that a good decision to not, I just think there's a lot more that goes into this than just he doesn't support Black lives.
Mm-hmm. And obviously reading, if anybody you can Google him, and everybody's got a news story on him. We just picked one, but he seems to be speaking out of a conviction. Mm-hmm. And I would love for somebody to press into that a little bit more, because I feel like there's more to be said, but obviously he's just saying, he's quoted, I didn't mean any ill will by it. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm better than anyone. So if we're taking him at face value, okay, but you sent a message. And so he's following a conviction, but not everybody's going to understand that. Mm-hmm. Did he make a post about it? A lot of people would maybe explain themselves a little more. So leaves us room to interpret when we're not looking at, when we don't have the whole story. I mean, just like a lot of things. So
I think that's good. One of the things that I guess I've sensed or felt as people have shared this is, and I have respect, for people that do have conviction and will, go against the grain in something. Whether I agree with them or not, I have respect that they're willing to do that. And then there's probably a story behind it. I think one of the things that I've seen people jump onto, and we do this all the time with biblical narratives, David and Goliath, or whatever, is that we like to make comparisons of the bunny. Ooh, I love the bunny. That's a VeggieTales version of
the bunny.
Daniel, Meshach, and Abednego, that they're refusing to bow their knee to, a king or another god. And so I think with that verbiage of him saying, hey, I'm refusing to bow down to anything but God. I mean, obviously, I don't think that's even like a physical thing. Like he's never kneeled down before in any other kind of way. I think it's probably more of a heart thing, and I get and I respect and understand. But I think too often we take what's happening in our world and we enter it into the biblical narrative, and then we celebrate him as if he is Daniel, here's a modern day Daniel. And though I think that there could be those biblical things that we take and we learn from it and we take and we should apply to our lives, far too often David and Goliath is one of the ultimate examples. It's just thrown around in culture, when anybody, is a superior athlete or team and they play someone and they're like, David won, or we all also like to look at ourselves as the hero of the story, right? Like we all, who's walked around and I'm Goliath. No one.
Yeah.
Except Goliath, I guess. And so we want to look at ourselves probably a lot of times in that lens, and we glorify a Christian and make him a celebrity. So sometimes I wonder how much he was cognitively thinking about this response, this reaction. He probably knew that some of it was going to happen. Yeah. What was those teammates' conversations like? I'm sure he had those conversations. So there's so much there, but I don't want to get on the bandwagon of making him the modern day David,
right?
Well, or Daniel.
I was just gonna say, I think the reality is right now there is so much putting a spotlight on faith and Christianity. There's a lot of stuff that's happening that it's putting a spotlight on Christians and what are they going to do? How are they going to respond? With COVID and masks and Black Lives Matter, and there's so much where it's well, how are Christians going to respond? And I'm exhausted, personally. I don't know how other people feel, but I'm exhausted. Every single day there's something new where I feel like I have to pray and ask God and figure out what should I do as a Christian to respond to this thing. And it's just it can wear someone down. And I think a lot of Christians are just trying to figure out, where do I take a stance? Where do I stand up for my faith and not just allow all these things to just keep coming and hitting and just back down and allow things to happen? And I think it's a really hard balance right now. And it's a really hard thing to find of, do I stand up against this, or do I, for faith, or cancel culture? There's just so many things. It's exhausting. And I just think it's for someone like this to do this in such a big, large scale, public thing would be really hard to make that decision. And like you were saying, it was a conviction from him,
right? And
so I think that's just interesting viewpoint on how that happened. But I just wanted to
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I don't know if other people can relate, but I'm just really worn out about everything right now.
It is tiring.
I think there's symbolism to it as well, the way he's speaking about kneeling. And I mean, you could take it either way though, right? I don't know if this guy's married. I was trying to find it, but I mean, a man will kneel to propose to his wife, right? Is that, disgracing God because you're kneeling to your wife? No one would say that. So I mean, when you're going to go and take symbolism and try to turn it into your actual faith, that's a bit of a stretch for me. And it's also, I think there's, with the Black Lives Matter movement, there's a lot of tension in the Christian community about, well, do I support the organization? Or not? And I think the organization, there's still a lot there that is is pretty hard as a Christian to completely buy into.
Yeah.
But I think what the problem happens, where that kind of disconnect happens, is when they can't even support the statement. And when someone's like, well, I can't say that because I might be misinterpreted as supporting the organization.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's okay. And so by doing something like this, where they're like, hey, we want to acknowledge, that Black lives do matter. And then he's like, well, no, that's, it's so messy, right? Like we can't go, and we don't know this guy. Everyone's just kind of judging him at face value right now. And it's just a really messy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it could define his life. So
yeah.
I just think it's interesting how we all are looking at the same headline, but we're getting different things out of it. For me, when I'm looking at this and I'm seeing him standing, I'm like, is there something in my life that I'm kneeling to that I should be standing for?
Yeah.
And I love that we can have these conversations, that we can dialogue about that. And I think it's important. And I just want to encourage us and everybody who's listening to have conversations like this, where you're talking about things like this and not just sharing your opinion. Let's listen to other people's viewpoints and what you're getting out of it, because that's how we grow and we learn to love and respect each other. So,
and I love how you took that. For you personally, it was more about growing closer to God and like growing in your faith personally than just having a stance and deciding, oh, I believe this and this is what I'm going to stand for. But you actually took it and made it personal and as something that was like going to grow you spiritually. I think that's a great way to look at things, because really that's what matters, is like our walk with the Lord and our faith, and how we are taking things and applying it to our own faith.
Yeah, and ask people that like. I've been in a cohort all summer or all this month with Myron that he's been leading on race and reconciliation, and that's one of the questions, like literally I asked him last night was about this, because I knew we were going to talk about it. And it's different, his response is going to be different, and it enlightened me in a different way. And then I think the other part, and I'm not going to give it to everybody, because sometimes we want to be lazy and not ask somebody. So go ask somebody for their opinion about it, especially like somebody from a different culture.
I love that.
Because I think you having a relationship with them builds empathy towards how they would feel about it. Then you can talk through why or why not. But I think the other thing that this does is it doesn't mean that you can that if you kneeled you weren't a Christian. And so I think I'm guessing there were more than one Christian on that team, and so some people have chosen to kneel because they're a Christian, because they have that conviction, because they believe that Black Lives Matter is a biblical statement, not just like a hashtag, but they believe like, hey, this is like God did this, and he cares for all culture, and he cares for every race, and there's one human race, but he cares for every part of it, that God has a multicultural, multi-ethnic bride that he's married to, and it's beautiful. And so I think that's the other part of the conversation, is like you can throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, oh, so he's the only Christian on the team. He's the only one bold enough to have done that, and the rest are a bunch of frauds. And I would not, like, as I've been considering what would I do in that situation? I don't know, because I don't know the dynamics and the relational stuff that's going on inside that locker room.
But what you said there is like, that's such dangerous territory, though, because we want to celebrate it one way, but like you said, we do throw the baby out with the bathwater without actually knowing.
But I mean, that's why we need the body of Christ, because we are all going to be on a different end of things, and then we have to come together and figure out what that means for us, as the church. So
good. All right, our topic this week is vacations, and that's up next. Vacation time. Vacations. Who remembers those? Anyone?
What?
I do recall.
Those are things that people would do. They like take a break out of their busy lives to do something more stressful than they were doing at home. No, sometimes it's that way. I feel like I kind of need a vacation, though. Like I haven't taken any time off in a while, and I'm like, I don't know what I would do right now for a vacation.
Same.
But it sounds nice.
Yeah, I had 2 vacations planned for this summer, and both of them have been canceled. So sad.
My wife and I, we were celebrating our 20th anniversary on July 1st, and no, I'm not 40 yet. But that all kind of just got canceled because what do you know, you're not going to go anywhere.
You gonna celebrate it next year then, or
yeah, we're going to celebrate 20
Just
years
pretend,
next year and be like
canceled?
Renew.
We ended up taking some of the money we saved and investing it in some new countertops of the house. So that was our vacation,
Which is like exciting, but you're looking at that's a beach.
I think though that the countertops were actually called white sand. So it brings it all together. It's like a vacation in my kitchen.
What was the vacation going to be? Did you have it planned and booked and all that?
We were like talking about it for a long time, and then like we were just barely getting into like, okay, let's start planning this right when all the pandemic stuff kicked off. So it was going to involve something with palm trees. I don't know, like something tropical. Something Instagrammable really is what vacations are all about, right?
Mm-hmm. Got to feed the gram.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else need a vacation?
I do.
Okay.
We had it was one of those things where the year started and we had 2 big vacations, like one family vacation with my in-laws.
Yeah.
And we were going to go on a cruise to the Bahamas and that got canceled. Because at the beginning we were like, man, we're kind of feel like we're doing a lot this year.
Yeah.
And then that got canceled. And then it's our 10-year anniversary this year. And so we were going to go to Mexico with another group of another couple, and that got canceled. So it was like,
yeah.
I did my own sound effect there.
That was a good sound effect.
Yes, but I want to bring up, and I'm curious if you guys have had this feeling of grief and grieving those moments of, hey, this is sad. I mean, I know we link grief with death. That's very valid. But there's other things in life to grieve. And I feel like I saw a lot of people doing that this summer. Like Eric, you talked about vacations. I mean, I'm sure we're not the only two. And it's like when those emotions and feelings come up, don't stuff those down. Like feel those things, like talk about them. Like,
but I don't want to.
That. Eric, tell me more about that.
It makes my tummy feel weird.
You just might need Tums, maybe.
Yes, okay. Pop a few Tums.
I think a bigger thing too for like family vacations, like when you go with your family, sometimes it's like the only time of year that you really get to spend with like family that you don't normally see, or like you just really value and cherish that time, like especially
traditions.
Yeah, and especially for me and my husband, like we've moved away from like where we used to live, and like we don't get to see our family as much, and so we look forward to our trips because it's like we actually get to see all of our family that we've been missing. And so I think that that's been kind of one big thing that I grieve when we've had to cancel our trips. It's just like, man, I just don't get to be with my family,
spend that time.
Yeah.
Alex, tell us.
Jinx.
Let me tell you everything about vacations. No, I think one of the things about vacations that I guess I'm wrestling through in like just life is there. So my family didn't take a lot of vacations when I was younger. So we had a large family, basically if you couldn't get there in, a car that would break down or, something like that. And oftentimes we had old cars. So we're like, you can only drive so far, or like it was to, visit my grandparents in the Panhandle and stuff. So I know that as I'm becoming an adult, vacations look, I guess, a lot different for me and as I'm shaping it for my family and our situation than it did. And so I'm like kind of rewriting trying to understand and get a grasp on what vacation looks like, what it is. As I have friends, that have a little bit more money than I do and they're able to take some of those vacations, I start to wrestle with, what that looks like and should I be keeping up with them and doing all those kind of things. So right now we're just trying to establish like our family rhythms in vacation, I think. And then not just family rhythms, but like even Aaron and I are trying to figure out what that means. And I think vacation oftentimes, like to me, always means like you're going to a destination, going somewhere. And so we're trying to wrestle through like what all that means. And I don't know. So
well, I think you bring up a good point about, and that was a question I kind of wanted to ask everybody, like what did vacations look like as kids, like when you were growing up? I know for me, it was kind of similar to what you're mentioning. I was like the youngest of 5 siblings, and so by the time I was in kindergarten, all my siblings had been married and moved out. But still, like if we went anywhere, it was in like my dad's 80s conversion van. And I remember like as a kid, we would, go all across country. We'd drive from South Dakota to California in this van, and it would break down all the time. And it was always like belts would break all the time. I still to this day have an irrational fear that everywhere I travel, a belt is going to break on my car because it was constantly happening. Yeah. As a kid, we were always on the side of the road, and my dad's like, "Oh, belt broke." I'm like, "Oh, this must just happen all the time." It's like getting gas or changing the oil. But so now I'm just like, it is different, and so I am curious, like, did everyone else go on vacations a lot as kids, or was that like a normal habit of, summer vacation or going somewhere big?
If we're talking about vacation destination, flying on a plane, going more than 2 or 3 hours away, no, that was not the way I grew up. I'm the oldest of 7, so a vacation or time away for our family was driving 2 hours to my grandparents' farm, and I have great memories. As a child, I didn't think I was missing out. As an adult, I think my parents did the best they could with what they had. Like 7 kids is a lot. That's a lot of dollars in plane tickets or gas. And so, I think it was, looking back, it's more about the memories that you create. And like even now, Eric, you were just talking about like how you're laughing as like you're talking about your dad changing a belt on the side of the road. And it's kind of like, as parents, a good reminder of, okay, how we act in those stressful situations is creating a memory for our kids.
Yeah, because there are those memories in vacation where it's like that stressful like first 10 minutes on the road of like, oh, I forgot something, and then they get mad at each other because they forgot something, and then you have to go to the bathroom and they're like, oh, you should have gone to the bathroom before it's just like that stressful like moment of just like, okay, like you have to work together and be a family, and you're stuck in a car together. It's kind of just like creating these cultures and like rhythms of your family that you kind of get to see. And I think as a kid, my vacations looked a little different than like, I feel like they kind of shift as you get older, and then you have kids, and then you're back to like, oh, we don't, we can't afford like these crazy, exploring trips or whatever. And like, we just had like a pop-up camper and would go every a couple of hours away and just camp. But it was fun, and I remember like I have memories from that. And it wasn't necessarily like the memory of like the most beautiful beach or like the most, the nicest hotel. It was the memories of like, oh, we caught crabs together, and that was so fun, and I love doing that with my family. So it really is about the like experience and the memories for sure.
Yeah, my vacations were at Cracker Barrel when we would be able to order soda with our meals.
Oh, yep.
Because you're a large family.
Yes.
And
you skipped
like,
that
everybody orders soda. That automatically adds $30 to our
don't
bill.
Think about it.
Yeah. Like that, you just know.
You're sharing those fries.
Like, I remember having those conversations in the car. Like, guys, no one's getting soda.
Yep.
Mom, it comes with the kids' meals here. I don't care. Just in case I mess it up. No, but I joke about that, but really, like, as I think of the vacation, like, you only know what you know, and so for me, like, those moments in my life were some of the greatest moments ever. Like, we would, we lived, when I was born, in the Panhandle, and we'd go just to we lived in Scottsbluff. We'd go up to Colorado, where my dad would vacation when he was younger, and he would love to take us there because that's where he had a lot of nostalgia and memories, and it wasn't like fancy or ritzy, but like they were some of the best memories and moments that are still etched in my mind. And so we didn't take any like lavish vacations, but I don't look back and like, I've never been to Disneyland, Disney World, none of that, but I don't feel like my childhood was a 4 out of 10 because I didn't get to go to Disney World because all my other friends did. And so and maybe that's just a perspective, but also on the flip side, like, now that I'm older, like, I never went to the ocean until I was like in college. My kids have been to the ocean a couple times, but it's all about, like, it's situational. We know a family that literally, they have a house and they're gracious and they let us stay at this house on the beach, and it's like cheaper for us to fly there and stay free in a house than it is to like drive to Kansas City and pay to stay in a hotel. And so a lot of it, as I've become older, a lot of life, it's not what you know, it's who you know in some ways. And so because of people that are very gracious with those kind of things, because I think growing up, I could be like, how could you afford a house on a beach? You guys must be super rich, and shouldn't you be spending your money in better ways? But then as I get to know people like that are so generous, like it's provided my family opportunities to create memories that would have never happened if it wasn't for that person making that investment, but being generous with it. So.
And I think it is so much about the memories, right? Like we kind of hit on that. And that's, I mean, for me, I remember being in this conversion van, no seatbelts in it at all. And I would sit on the cooler that my dad kept between the two front seats. And I would just sit there. And like, I remember learning to count to 100 as a kid just by asking him questions and stuff like that. So it's just like that, those little things that you just wouldn't have had those experiences otherwise. One of the, I think vacations serve a lot of different purposes for people. I know I saw the stat that in like 2015, I think it was, that there were like I'm trying to find it here real quick. It was like 658 million vacation days went unused.
Oh, wow.
And so like Americans are kind of notoriously bad at taking a break from their jobs.
Right.
But I think it is kind of figuring out what purpose does it serve. Sometimes, Alex, hearing you talk, like I kind of have some of those same emotions of like, when I see other people going on these really lavish vacations, I'm just like, well, okay, well that looks fun, but why do I want to go on a vacation like that? Like where's my heart in all this? And I think sometimes it's just legitimate. Like I never had that experience. So like part of me is either jealous or whatever. Like I do want to experience that. I mean, maybe I never had the opportunity, but if I could, I would like to. And so you kind of wrestle with that a little bit. And plus for your family, you want to give them those experiences too. But going back to the memory thing, like sometimes you can just do with what you got.
I think something else is interesting. You talked about how people didn't take vacation days, and I feel like as I grew into like young adulthood, I started to see vacations differently because it's like, well, now I'm working, now I have a job, now I have to pay for this vacation, and I kind of started to look at it as like, I'm going to work all year long and just work so hard and like make money and save up for this vacation. And then this 1 week out of the year, I will actually get to relax and rest and enjoy myself. And I think over this past year, I've kind of just start to shift my mindset of like, why do I feel like that's the only time that I can relax and rest and enjoy myself? And I think that's a total like American culture that has been built up of like, yep, only that 1 week, that's your vacation. The rest of the year, you need to be hustling and working and be busy and all this stuff. And I think I've started to shift my mindset of like, actually I can rest on the weekends. I can choose to have one day every weekend and rest and enjoy and relax and enjoy my day and not feel like I have to just like wait until that 1 week of the year to actually relax. And so I think that's been a huge mindset that has changed for me, and it's been so good just for my mental health and just in general.
Yeah, because there's a lot of pressure put on that 1 week. And it's like if you didn't get your rest out of it.
Right. Which normally you don't, because then you get back and you're exhausted and then you have to do laundry and then, you're not ready for the next week. And
it's always problematic when our senses of identity are aligned with things like that. When it's like, well, how much have I produced? Am I producing enough?
Do I deserve to take a break? Do I deserve the rest?
Yeah. And I think one of the things I've been wrestling with and reclaiming, I remember like hearing it growing up in movies and things like that, and I just thought it was a British thing when they would use the word holiday. Like I remember growing up and be like, we use vacation in the United States and they use holiday, but really that word came from holy day. Like so originally it was a churched word where people would go and they would take a holiday, holiday, and they would go and like spend that as a time to reflect and to like do how God created us to be and to get away and connect and do nothing except just exist and be in the presence of God, which is a holy thing. And so people built that into the rhythm, and they would always say holiday, and then we morphed it into like vacation and bigger and better. But I know for me, like one example of this last year where a vacation was like holy for my wife and I was someone reached out from that we knew and took us to Hawaii. That was like not even a bucket list item for me. Like, just like content. I'm never going to go there. But they reached out like, you know, a year in advance to plan this, and they had an opportunity to do that, which was a huge blessing. But like the moment, like the week that it happened was literally when everything was happening with our daughter, with like figuring out surgery and everything going on in her life. And we were like it was like this gift from these people, but like ultimately this gift from God, where he was like, I know your soul needs a holiday. Like I know your soul just needs rest, and to not just like rest and go, you know, to Cocoa Keys, but like to rest and be like just blown away by me. Like just being in some of those moments, we're just like, holy cow, God is huge. He is sovereign. He created this beauty. And like, it gave me, like, as somebody who's a pastor, a moment to like reflect and be like, this is the God that I serve. And this circumstance for us is, you know, not, I mean, compared to him creating this, like it's nothing compared to that. So for us, trying to take that kind of attitude more into, as we're trying to reframe our family, and like how do we present it and see it as some of those moments for, you know, maybe I'll start using that word all the time, holiday. So that was a huge gift from these people, but also that they didn't even know they were like being stewards with what they had to be God's hands and feet to bless our souls, you know. So it was cool.
And you know what's interesting about that, I just realized, is like you got to experience like the beauty of like Hawaii and like the nature and creation. And I just was thinking about how a lot of people, like their choices for vacation is to be in nature or to be somewhere that's like beautiful, that God has created, like the ocean or the beach or mountains or something like that. Like it's just crazy that we choose to be out in nature and creation to have our rest and our vacation. It's just such an interesting thing that that's what people choose.
There are Vegas people though too, okay? There are people that love going to Las Vegas and just people watching and like
right.
Is that what they call it? Vegas?
I feel like there's people that do a couple different things. Like there's people that are like vacation, sit on a beach or sit in the mountains, fish, read a book, and then there's vacation people that are like boom, boom,
or
go,
like
go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a couple like, and maybe it's personality type.
Is. It totally. I only am reinforcing that because my wife and I are opposite on that. And like, I think that makes a good team sometimes, but like sometimes it doesn't, because like she's very much like, let's plan an agenda, let's have everything lined up, and this is what we're gonna do. And I'm kind of just like, let's just go with the flow. Like let's see what happens. Like, you know, let's see where it takes us.
That's me. I have to be like, I feel like if I'm not being entertained on vacation in some ways, that I'm
it's
not,
a waste of time.
And Aaron's just like, we don't have our kids right now. Like, just sit in this 10 minutes and like just breathe.
Rest. It all really comes down to rest. Like where do we find rest? We need
to be filled
rest.
up.
And how are we making space for that? Is it a vacation? Is it going across the country, international?
Right.
A staycation?
Yeah.
Those
and
count too.
Even now it's like we can't go to certain places, but we can still have like a staycation, or like we've gone hiking a couple times here, you know, in Nebraska, which is shocking that you can hike in Nebraska. It was but you can still do stuff, you know.
And a conviction I have had over the last couple years getting to go to like a place like that, like Hawaii, or on vacations, is I used to want to make sure everyone knew, you know, like, so every time I was there, like I would have the story, the toes in the sand, all of that kind of stuff.
Hot dogs or legs.
Yeah, hot dogs or legs. Yeah, hashtag. But so like that is one thing God's been using to like show that these are gifts for me that I don't have to like make known to everybody. Even like my sister's wedding was a few months after that, and it was in Mexico, and because I did it, we were able to go, and so like I'm like, I just went to Hawaii and then I went to a resort in Mexico. What's everyone gonna think of me? Like what are they thinking Alex is making vacation, and all this stuff, and I would have to explain that, and so that was also like this weird guilt that I was feeling, and like, so I'm just not going to post about it. I'm like, the people that know me.
People would rather send you on a guilt trip than let you go to vacation.
Boom. Oh. Drop the mic.
That's another conviction that I had a couple years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. There is a couple that I know, may or may not be on staff, that they go to Hawaii every year. And I always see people like giving them a hard time. I won't name the people giving them a hard time.
It's kind of awkward that they're in the room right now as you're talking about that.
Okay, but listen, so I had this conviction, and it was just it was this moment where I was like, I am so happy for them, and I'm choosing to be happy. And so I kind of made it my thing where it's like, I want to be happy that they're like spending time together as a family. Because I think there's like this vacation shaming. Like Alex, I remember you going on that trip earlier this year, and I didn't know the circumstances. I didn't know like how much you needed that personally. Yeah. But I'm like, I'm excited. Like, I don't need to know the reasons or the details, and I'm not trying to be like holier than thou. It's a lesson that God has.
I see your halo though. But.
Yeah. See my halo. Anyway, so it's just something that I've had a personal conviction on of like, I want to celebrate with people, because you can join people in that, and like, I'm glad that you get to connect as a family and rest. And so go on that vacation.
What if there was a commandment about coveting?
That'd be crazy.
Wild.
Well, drop that. Guess we're done.
Yeah, and I think
mic drop.
I think we're seeing like the effects of the pandemic kind of affecting the tourist industry in general. Like, I mean, maybe it's a good time to buy Marriott stock. I don't know, because it'll go up later, hopefully. But I do wonder, like, I mean, you could kind of get into like a whole capitalism conversation or something like that. But just like this supporting the tourist industry. I grew up, spent a lot of years in Rapid City, South Dakota, and like that's like tourist hotspot. There's Mount Rushmore there, and it's just one of those things. Like, I remember I would go to lunch with my friends during like in high school, and like Taco Bell, the taco would be this price 9 months out of the year, and then 3 months out of the year the taco was much more expensive because they would rate, all the restaurants and stuff would raise their prices when the tourists were there. And it's just, and then you're also looking at like Mount Rushmore, and it's this big celebrated thing, and it brings in tons of money because people are visiting. And just full disclosure, I can say this stuff that I'm about to say because I was born in South Dakota. Okay, so don't get mad at me about this. But I'm
nervous.
I'm just it's just
the Corn Castle.
Yeah, that's in Mitchell, right? The Corn Palace. But you look at something like Mount Rushmore, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, recently people have been like, oh, the guy that made it was a racist, whatever. I'm not going to talk about that. I don't know the facts on that. But it's just one of those things where, like, here's this land that was given to the Sioux Nation. And then when they discovered gold, they were like, hey, Custer, go kick them off this land because we want this land. And then, to add insult to injury, we carve our favorite leaders into the land. And it's one of those things where when you look at it that way, you're kind of like, oh, well, is this something like, or what? Is it weird to celebrate that and like take your kids and go?
My sister was there this weekend and it was packed.
Yeah. I mean, it's not stopping anyone, and I'm not necessarily saying it should.
And sometimes it gets so far removed from the actual, like what you're saying, the back. It's just like, oh yeah, we're gonna go see the giant faces in the rock and take pictures with it, and that's like what it becomes, rather than like what you're saying, like the history of it.
All right. I mean, it's speaking of Hawaii, it's like also like that they were a nation before. That whole history is very strange.
Fascinating. I had no clue until I went that. Yeah. So
well, and there's even like a weird like Christian tie-in that like makes it strange because like the Christian, the Hawaiian League is like Christian missionaries who went there, and then their descendants ended up like kind of aiding and taking over the nation eventually. I mean, it's all, you can look it up. Wikipedia, I'm sure it's all accurate. But it's like stuff like that, and you go, okay, well, I mean, it goes into that guilt thing, like, okay, well, we can't really make ourselves just feel bad about it. But I do think being aware of what we're celebrating is important sometimes, or what, where I think when you go to Hawaii, like, don't just go and be like, okay, yay, I get a drink out of a coconut, but kind of invest in like what that culture is, like why is that here, Yeah.
And I think to me, ultimately, and so many things in life come down to stewardship, really. I mean, there's a lot of stewardship questions that come up with, like, for some people, like, it's buying a new car or leasing a new car every 2 years that it's going to really make them like feel like they've accomplished something and they've always got the bigger and better. And some people, they're like, no, we're going to save everything for vacation, and we're not going to have nice things because we want to create these memories. And then we can judge people based off of either or. But really, I think it's a matter of stewardship with and it's one question I'm always asking myself, whether it's fiscally or time or whatever, like, if I was God, and that's always a dangerous question to ask because thank God I'm not, but if I was God, would I give me more? So whether that's time or vacation or resources, as I open my checkbook and we're balancing it, as I open like my resources of how much vacation I'm taking or how I'm stewarding my finances, time, all of that, am I stewarding it well? And there's some people that are, and there's times I am and I'm not. And so I think it does become a stewardship question in a lot of ways. Do we need that? If you're going into debt over a vacation, probably not wise, you know? And so that's where a lot of people do get in trouble because they're chasing that dream or whatever it is, that experience, and then like they're enslaved to it the rest of the year to pay it off. And that's difficult.
I think there's a lot of tough questions around it. I think the point you brought up, Jess, about shaming, like that's not good either, right? And so I think it's just and also responsibility, being responsible with your finances. It's everybody's going to be in a different place. I think it is truly hard for some people to look at that maybe disparity between where I'm at and where you're at, and like, why can't I do that? And it's easy to fall into that trap of feeling bad for yourself. And that's hard, it's not an easy place to be when you feel like you're missing out on something, and you know that your time on this earth is limited, and it's like, okay, and I'm not going to get to experience these things that other people are experiencing. But I think your motivations and your intentions kind of need to be in the right place.
Amen.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I need a vacation from this conversation. So why don't we plan a trip? And that's to end it. Thanks everyone for listening wherever that might be. We really appreciate it. Thank you all around this table for joining me for this conversation. If you'd like to reach out to us with any questions, concerns, comments, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email to podcast@cccomaha.org, or you can reach out to us on social media @cccomaha. We'd love to hear from you. And until next week, we'll talk to you then.